Welcome and a very good afternoon to the listeners and viewers of Suniye Tau. And I'm very much enlightened and delighted to have such a forum of distinguished personalities. Some joining us from Hyderabad, Dr. Alok Bajpai from Kanpur, Mr. Gulam Husain, I believe, is in Melbourne, and
Perth. I'm in Perth right now.
Perth, Western Australia, and Dr. Shaukat, Mirza, and Dr. Sameen, Fatima, both are in Hyderabad. And as per the agenda, this is going to be a question-answer session, and the way we're going to work around it is that whoever is present gets the first chance to ask the question of these two distinguished specialists, Dr. Alok Bajpai, a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and Mr. Gulam Husain, an AI and ML IT technology specialist. So as Dr. Shaukat Mirza has already played the card in terms of being the chivalrous gentleman in the from his household, he's asking Professor Sayyida Sameen Fatima, who is an IT specialist, and I don't know much about her, if she would like to ask questions of these two gentlemen, Dr. Alok Bajpai and Gulam Husain, in the area of neuroscience and AI/ML. So please, salam and respect.
Thank you.
Professor Sameen Fatima, please go ahead with your question to whoever is your first call.
Thank you very much for having us here on this show, and I think you're putting together very good speakers who are very clear in whatever they're saying and very explicit. I really enjoyed listening to both these sessions, and they have really taken pains to make the whole thing sound so simple and easy, and yet we could understand what they're talking. So first of all, I should congratulate both Gulam Husain and Alok. I think Gulam Husain, I've heard you, and I would like to just ask you a few things before I go on to Alok. I am also a professor. I work for Osmania University, one of the old universities at Hyderabad, which completed its 100 years in 2017. So it's a pretty old university. And in AI, there are so many advances happening, and you really brought out very strongly saying that the symbolic AI was there, and then the neuro science neural networks kind of an approach was there. I think now we are really talking about explainable AI and not explainable AI. And that's what I think you were hinting at that time.
Yeah.
So, because there are such lovely areas like logic, which we really teach our students in AI. There are scripts. There are other knowledge representation techniques available. But now they're really being sidelined, and we are really talking about just neural networks or deep learning today, where we really cannot explain, like you said, the correlation and the causation.
Yeah.
The distinction was brought up between correlation and causation. And causation is not really being explained by neural networks or deep learning, but maybe the correlation part is there. So what kind of advancements are going on as far as causation is concerned? And you hinted that explainable AI is being looked into. So I'm more interested in knowing a little more about how these other representation techniques are going to surface again. And is there support from technology to enable these paradigms to take a lead? Because the explanation is really important. Although we may arrive at right conclusions, but the cause for that sometimes is not known. So is that how humans also function, without knowing a cause, because something lies in our subconscious, we work on it, or we rational human beings. So we really think it out and then we act upon things. So I just wanted your views on this. What do you say about this?
Yes, thank you so much for that. And it's really interesting observation. And actually, yeah, that was the crux of our discussions last time, which you kind of brought forward, right? Um, yes. So the real issue here is that uh, this, unfortunately, the way AI technology is progressing, it's not your very scientific methodology, right? In science, what happens is that you usually it's publicly funded. That has been the case so far, right? In laboratories and universities, and then you do science, right? I mean, and it has to be data driven, and then you should all intellectual honesty demands that you should approach everything with an open mind, like your hypothesis. You more often than not, it turns out to be wrong, right? What has happened in this field, unfortunately, in past 20, 30, 40 years, is that there are few behemoth, like $1 trillion companies, who have, by virtue of this dot-com boom and everything, collected heaps of data for the first time in human history about people's behavior, right?
Right.
So, and then they had, of course, all the money, right? So then this research itself kind of, in my view, again, and there are very strong views to that effect, but in my view, that went haywire, that went little bit on the tangent. If you notice, all these major researchers who actually are coming from, like, very prestigious universities, they're all working with Googles and Microsoft of the world and Amazons, right? And that has generated a disbalance, in my view, and a lot of hype. So science never progresses with through hype. What is happening is it's more like media management these days. So they will first write an article in Forbes and Wall Street, and then will start their research, which in my view is not a very good approach to do, a good science. Yeah. So this is the problem, right? So we have got a lot of data, and we have got an approach like neural network based approach, where we are trying to derive smart in statistical models based on what is there in the data, which which is good, like but that is only one part of the story, one side of the story, right? And as you alluded to, and that was the crux of my talk last time, is that we need to talk about causation, we need to talk about correlation, we need to talk about explainability, we need to talk about reasoning ability. So all that is sort of on the back burner for some time, and everyone is all talking about neural networks and data. Problem with that approach is that data is generated by human beings, right? And if you start deriving your conclusions based on those data, I mean, if somehow that reasoning capability has to emerge from that data, problem is if that data is biased, so the reasoning will be biased. Yeah. And that data will always be biased, because that data has been generated by the human activity, unless someone has done that sort of audit on top of that. So that is missing big time. Yeah. And I think we have all decided to learn the hard way, and that is exactly what is happening. So there were a lot of hypes in last 5 to 10 years around whatever deep learning approaches were being adopted by these large companies, and then slowly people are realizing this is not the full story, right? So we are learning it hard way. So all this money is being spent on this research, and then people are finding actually this is not delivering what was being promised. And now let's look at Judy Appel and causality and correlation and explainability, So somehow that the intent and the business case and business benefit behind all these models was put on the back burner, and there was focus on certain technology, and it was being driven by big corporations and big money. All the VC fund is there. Yeah. So let me tell you a real, I mean, in Sydney in 2018, I was just having this brief discussion with a potential investor, and he was expecting, like, me telling him, like, overhyped, like, what can we do? We can conquer the world and things. And I was very, very realistic, because when you're talking, it's like, if that talk would have progressed, then there would have been little bit commitment on my side to deliver on what I was saying, right? So I was very, very humble, and I was putting a lot of caveats, and he was not impressed, you know. But I knew if I just start, giving, wind to the hypes, and no, we can do this, we can conquer the world, and this, that. So probably I would have got better results. So basically, we all got swept
Mhm.
away in that tide for some time, where everyone was just talking about DL, deep learning, and somehow no one knows how deep learning will actually provide that ability to reason the model of the world, and everything will emerge from that. And some sane voices were questioning all along. I mean, Francois Chollet and Gary Marcus and people like that. They said, no, it's not making sense. So this is the story, because there's so much money, and there's only one kind of use case, because these Facebook and Googles of the world had so much data, and they needed to mine that data. So everyone assumed this is pretty much the AI research, but I think that's a very it's a
Lopsided.
disbalanced view. Yeah, disbalanced view. Yeah, there are other perspectives that need to be considered and taken into account, and we need to do uh, true blue traditional science, scientific discovery. Being intellectually honest.
We used to have a language called as Prolog, if you remember,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
Prolong and
really
yeah.
took off long, long back, but then it's died down. But if we have processors which are really logic based and things like that, I think that would make it all easy for us. Why aren't
Indeed.
people looking at that? I don't know. Or are people looking at that which I'm not aware of?
Yeah, so that's the reason I explained to you, like in past 20 years, there was no money. If there's no VC fund, no money, so
Nobody.
it's a very robust science, but it will die its own death, slow
Yeah,
death.
but actually,
That's the problem.
the European countries were advocating that, and then they just kept silent, and everybody moved towards this. I mean, I don't know what happened because the US was had a different approach, but the European countries had a little different approach. But now
Yeah.
everybody's fallen in line. I mean, why the investors are just investing in this? Maybe the results are accurate, more accurate than the
Well, it's
others.
just
I don't
in
know.
my view. See again, so because we are focusing only very siloed use cases, right? So they have just a very limited set of use cases, huge amount of data and huge amount of money. So all research, if you notice all the PhD that is being done in a lot of universities everywhere, so using neural network DL model, try to identify better, identify more number of tumors, so everything is
Right.
like that. So no one is doing anything, it's all beaten track,
Track, yes.
so basically, so unfortunately, the last 20 years, the way the AI research, AI technology, quote unquote, research has panned out, it is being driven by the interests of few large companies. Yeah, so it was very difficult to, there were few sane voices, as you said, that there's some foundations in science. You cannot ignore those foundations. You can't just assume that somehow using better and better deep learning reasoning will emerge. I know, let's pray together. That's not science. You're not being intellectually honest if you're not providing a way forward, right?
Right.
So follow the money basically. So if all the money is in this space in a very narrow, so they needed a lot of people, a lot of smart algorithms to identify the cats and people in Facebook posts, and they have $200 billion sitting in their kitty. So everyone is doing just that. But there are more to it. There are other problems that you need to solve, right? So, and this is
Right.
exactly what we are facing, like as a technology company. So all the current popular neural network methods, they are extremely data hungry. At that petabyte, exabyte scale, and a lot of organizations don't have those kind of data. We have never bothered to develop the algorithms which will give business value to these organizations. So we have not done enough research there. So how can we maybe that's where this neuro symbolic and everything is coming into play, like so you need to have algorithms and approaches that can give value with the less amount of data, that can learn with less amount of data, right? Then only actually you can democratize this technology across the board. Otherwise, it's only for Googles and Amazons and Facebooks of the world. So that's the real tension. So now people are realizing slowly one step at a time, that these approaches will not work for the actual real, real world use cases. So see, so unless we implement a model, so brain itself, again, Alok sir may probably talk about that in a little bit more detail, but brain is nothing but a machine, a function which actually models this world, right? It's a modeling of the world. So if Apple is going to the ground, falling towards the ground, it's all common sense. But if all of a sudden you see Apple going up, you will be like, something is wrong. Either I have taken some sort of medicine here, or what is going on, So AI should have that capability. So because it's a model in your mind that Apple falls to the ground, right? Things fall to the ground. That's a model.
Yes.
Yeah, right. On top of that model, then you saw a data, and then you all of a sudden reasoned, right? Okay, this is not adding up. Yeah. So likewise, unless you build those models in your AI framework, so model observes something weird happening, it will never question that, So that weird may be happening because it's a cartoon movie, or it may be intentional, but at least it should note that down, and then it should update its model. Okay, if it is cartoon movie, weird things can happen. But if some person is actually falling off the cliff, let's call 000 or something, So that model is completely missing. And these DL Janta, that neural network Janta, they keep saying that somehow with better statistical approximations, better functions, this understanding will automatically emerge from the model, which is, no one has been able to explain properly as to how that will emerge from those models. So that is I think, next wave, where causality, causal inference and neuro symbolic, and basically the reasoning capability and base model of the world, that machines can understand. So that should be the foundational kind of technologies, in any robust general artificial intelligence.
Thanks for your perspectives. Really very nice to hear from you, because you're really running an industry and you are into it. I think your views are really very important to us. And
I feel I'm a bit of a victim of this this madness, because I deal with enterprise clients only, right? And my use cases are not about tagging cats and identifying party photos. My use cases are slightly different. And for those use cases, unfortunately, with all due respect, this current DL model, at least for the businesses that I deal with, they don't work like as is, So you need to be really intuitive, and you will have to engineer everything, neural networks plus predictive analytics plus, symbolic plus your traditional BI business intelligence. Everything has to be weaved together, and then only you can actually showcase some business value. And that is where I see the huge, if research potential is. So you can really streamline this pipeline that I just now showed you in terms of like how can, so it's a strategic business decisions you have to make. You have a lot of data coming from different departments of an organization, right? Some data is structured, some is semi-structured, and then it's not a humongous, you don't have that luxury of where you can have like petabytes of data to for your model to be updated and give, better decisions. You don't have that luxury. Once you've trained that model, and then some new event happens in the organization, some new data came, your model should be able to learn that quickly with one set only, with one training set, and then should be able to detect, okay, something is wrong, you need to take action. So these current DL-NN models don't cater for that kind of scenario. And I believe it's a huge $1 trillion opportunity whenever people start looking at that, Yeah.
So Gulam
Thank you so much.
Can I add to it a bit?
Sorry. Yeah, sure, as Alok sir. Sorry, I took a bit longer.
Unless you had some other question. No, it's perfect.
No.
Just continuing what you're saying, because it also connects to science. I think there is no science happening these days. Trust me. What is happening is technology. What is happening is technology. Science not ended, it slowed down 30 years back because, and I'll tell you where it rose from. Have you heard of this phrase called shut up and calculate?
Yeah.
This phrase was said when people were trying to understand quantum physics. So So there were two type of people. One who were trying to understand where the quantum world is, by the Einstein not really believing all this randomness and probability business. He was still from the old school. God
Yeah.
does not play
Yeah.
dice.
Exactly.
But there
That
were
was clear.
people of Niels Bohr company who said, you don't bother, you nobody can understand. As late as
Yeah.
80s when Feynman said this.
Yeah.
So they said, you shut up and calculate. That means the mathematics which came over the quantum physics worked
Yeah.
very well. Right. I'll give you an example. I'll systematically give you an example. Worked very well and has gone up to quantum computing. But
Yeah.
what is really happening in quantum world, very few people know. And
Yeah.
those who know, like a mystical thing, they can't put it in words and equations.
Yeah.
Honestly. Same is the case with brain. What we know, in tidbits, we know calculations and all that. But it's all a top-down thinking. You have
Yeah.
put chaos theory, you have put a quantum theory, you have put this and that, and try to build up. But what is happening in neuroscience is exactly what is happening in AI. Neuroscientists have become very data hungry
Yeah.
because there's something called imaging which has come up.
Exactly.
Yesterday, somebody sent me an article on neurotheology, whether there is a God neuron. Told that person that you are happy reading it. He said yes. I said be happy. You want? He said no. I want to discuss. I said boss, what do you want to discuss? You want to tell me that right from birth, there is an area of brain which caters to God or makes you realize God? Or I said the only test of it will be that you bring up a child where you do not mention this word. You don't tell him anything about God and spirituality. Then, if that area flashes on a functional MRI, then we'll agree it. But if you have the guts to do it. Now, what is happening that lot of whole neuroscience has been taken over by imaging people.
Yeah.
The same phenomena is happening there. The people who are making brain computer interfaces, they are just happy taking up a signal from here
Yeah.
and passing
Without
it to
going.
some external processes. They don't want to know how EEG comes in. They
Yeah.
don't want to know. Same imaging people, they'll say, okay, we have found this area of love, of lust, of this, of that. But I ask them, boss, some area of the brain will be flashing when you're doing any bloody damn thing in this world.
Yeah. Even you're
Because you are
flicking.
measuring you are measuring in milliseconds. Phenomena is happening at nanoseconds or seconds. How do you finally tell me that if this area is flashing while taking an executive decision, what has been the underlying process?
Yeah.
But trust me, the universities across the world are not interested in this. I have students working with me from IT Kanpur, electrical engineering and all, who come to me. I'm sort of their unofficial co-guide. I ask them, भैया EG पता है? उनको EG नहीं पता है. उनको एक रिदम यहाँ से पता है जो उठा लेते हैं और वो
Data
स्कोर
and
में
then
पास कर
yeah.
देते हैं.
Yeah.
सिमिलरली ऑटिज्म के में क्या हो रहा है, वो चेहरे पहचानो. साइकोलॉजिस्ट के ऊपर इतना प्रेशर आप लोगों ने डाल दिया है एआई और न्यूरो साइंस वालों ने कि साइकोलॉजी की डेफिनेशन में दे आर नो मोर इंटरेस्टेड. When they're talking of what is it, they are trying to do EEGs, and somebody called me up and they said we'll do a अभी कोरोना का जो हुआ था CT scans and all that, they wanted to study fractal geometry. I said, Guruji, psychology ki definitions are in peril for last 150 years. Why don't you go and work there? क्या करेगा fractal dynamics का भाई तो? What is the new thing? But this is the phenomena, and what you're saying is right, because the whole is like a tsunami. Everybody,
Yeah.
I'm doing imaging.
Follow the money. That's it. Yeah.
At the end of it, imaging is not going to tell you anything, because if you say this definitively this area is about this, it is not so. People like me I don't bother about these words called intelligence and all that. Although Fatima Shahji has sent me a whole neuroscience ka exam paper, maybe I'll be able to
Yeah,
answer
that
and
was
pass it.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
no, so what I'm saying, so I'm saying, I said you redefine. What are you talking? Were you talking about definition were made in 1900. People are trying to answer that. So it is again, somebody was thinking, they created a definition. We are doing a reverse engineering, trying to find its anatomical positions. So that is the state of affairs.
Yeah.
Can you just give me a second? One
Yeah,
second.
sure. Thank you, Dr. Alok. And
so does it clarify, Mrs. Sameen Fatima, or?
Yeah, it was a very nice perspective you gave me from the industry side, because you're working in the industry. And that's what I wanted to hear from you. I think we are all researchers and we do something, but I don't think the research is really great research that we do today in India, at least. And of course, we are doing it, though we are awarding PhDs too on the basis of that. But then we have to make a major jump wherein you can explain things out.
Exactly. Yeah. There's two aspects to it very quickly, actually, so that again, a lot of hypes, and we need to be very careful about these things. The two aspects, in my view, one is that, like, better. So two aspects of this entire AI business, in my view. One is the better automation, basically, So software has enabled us to do very effective automations in last, whatever decades, ERP systems and business intelligence and this and that. And next wave is like predictive analytics, right? More insights into the data. So that way, it's all good. But actually, people talk about AGI, and I am a little bit. Dr. Fatima Shah, she has not joined, but she has asked a couple of questions around that. So artificial general intelligence, that in my view is a hardware problem. You can't just, it's you're talking about a very, very different complex beast, in between your ears, brain that generates the mind, and then simulating even a very small subset of that is a very different problem altogether, in my view, than just a better automation of your business processes. So sometimes people start talking about these two things interchangeably, and that doesn't do good to anyone, in my view. So that's a hardware
problem. There are these quantum computers that are coming in the market. And what is the promise of those computers? I'm not too sure, but the quantum computing idea that even Alok was referring to, once that catches up, maybe we will have a different model again to implement, because right now technology support has to be there for a lot of ideas that psychology offers. Psychology has so many models, and those models, all of them have not been tried out. So I think
so hopefully we will have
there also there's confusion. There's a lot of confusion there, because when we talk of last time we were talking that we are trying to create a machine which should think like humans, and we have some a priori assumptions about ourselves. Exactly. That we are logical, rational people. Now the question is, our logic and rationality works in a context and in a frame which has been created by similar brains.
Yeah.
You understand? So what we are doing, because these days I say that everybody is behaving in a crazy way, and that has become the new normal. So the level of cognitive distortions which are happening all over the world, it's so evident actually. So you see these days, now 2 cases happening, and the international airlines already jumping within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have a certain memory of March 2020. So we often think, but we seem to be logical, and I'm saying absolutely without mincing my word. ये जो वो कहते हैं ना बढ़ई होता है ना कारपेंटर, तो बहुत फर्क नहीं है हम लोगों में. कारपेंटर का एक लॉजिक है अपना, ही इज मेकिंग थिंग्स लाइक दैट, ठीक है. तो उसने अपना लॉजिक क्रिएट कर लिया, उसका कुर्सी चल गया. अभी ना चलता तो कुछ और लॉजिक इस्तेमाल करता है. तो मेजॉरिटी इज वर्किंग इन दैट लॉजिक. तो हमें लगता है इट्स वेरी लॉजिकल, बट वी ब्रेन, ट्रस्ट मी, if things are going all right, it all appears very logical and rational. Once one small stone and which disrupts your imagined logicality, brain goes haywire because brain is working on entirely different model.
Yeah.
Brain
Wonderful.
is.
Thank you, Dr. Bajpai. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but because we have less than 1 minute, and we welcome Mr. Bala Iyer from New York as well. Thank you, Bala, for joining. Now, because we
thank you for inviting me. I was just wanted to listen in.